Hey everybody, and welcome back to Fitman Aquatics. So here's another weekly update. Got quite a bit to share. Nothing too exciting to see, depending on your interest in these tanks, but lots of information to give about plans coming up in the near future. Been away on vacation, finally got back, so now we are kind of working back into the fish room. You can probably even see behind me, we finally got around to making that cactus terrarium I've been talking about forever. Unfortunately, we didn't get a video made of it, but I will give you guys a closer look of it here in a second. We got a lot of things planned for this month with the fish room. We have one tank leaving us, unfortunately. The shrimp tank will be going away here probably next week, so next weekly update, I don't think the shrimp tank will be in there, but I will try and get some updates for you all, maybe even some videos if I can, so we can just keep an eye on how that's doing. And I also hope to have 2 more tanks pretty much set up by the end of the month. We'll see how that goes, but I definitely have one planned. It's already in the works. It's kind of a waiting game. Unfortunately, with this hobby, that's the way it goes. But without any further ado, let's take you over and start with the bird cage and work around to updating you on all of the other tanks. Alright, so bird cage is doing fairly well. The mini Christmas moss I did do a slight trimming on. It's still growing really well. Maybe adding some DIY CO2 setup to this tank. I don't know if it'll be this month, but probably by the end of the year I will have CO2 going in here. Overall, the plants are doing fairly well. The Physidens looks like it's bouncing back a little bit, very slowly, but again, it is a very slow grower. The Dwarf Sag is looking a little yellowish, but I'm hoping to add some new ones in there, and hopefully that will help create more of a carpet effect. The moss balls are doing okay. Big surprise, they're pretty easy to take care of. Again, the crypts in the back are looking awesome. I keep seeing more and more growth there. Now, if you guys are wondering, that little mirror that I just dropped in there is kind of enrichment for Mr. Bird. If you guys ever get a beta, I do encourage getting one of them. They're like $3, super cheap, super easy idea, but it'll give the beta something to do. Males will swim up to it and flare at it, or kind of spread their fins out and puff their gills out at it, because they think it's another male beta, and so they're trying to intimidate it. So that kind of gives Mr. Bird some activity. It's also good for his fins and for his overall health. Betas being a bit smarter, they can get depressed, and that mirror can do something to kind of give them something to look at. Now, I would say don't do it any more than like half an hour at most. The mirror even says 5 minutes max, but you want to make sure that they're not flaring at it too much. It kind of depends on the beta. Mr. Burden here is not very interested in it most of the time. He kind of just ignores it, which is fine. I've had betas in the past that use it like as soon as they see it. That's the only thing they focus on. He's more of a relaxed beta, so I'm even thinking about getting some snails or maybe even some shrimp in here just to kind of give him a dither, if you will, which is basically something that will attract his attention for a short period of time, give him something to play with, but they're much faster than he is and they'll get away. Or like a snail, they can tuck into their shell and he'll just get bored and swim away from it, and then they can go back to doing their snail thing. Now, real quick, up top here, you can actually see my air plant. My Tillandsia is actually doing really well. It's actually bringing a root down, and it's just above the water. So I think when it touches the water, things will start going even better, because it'll start pulling water up into that plant as needed. But overall, it's looking really healthy, so I'm very pleased with how that's going. And the moss on top of the tree here is actually growing very well, and it's even creeping up a little bit further and further. So I'm excited to see where that goes. So now over here at the geranium, you may be able to see some little mosquito larvae shooting around in there. Unfortunately, I do have them again, but there's not much I can do about it unless I want to try and add something in there that will take care of them. But because I don't have a lot of plant growth, I'd rather not add a fish. I'm just not sure there's enough oxygenation in here to give them something or enough oxygen to breathe. Now with that said, the cryptocorns you can see are doing fairly well. The anarchus right here, that vine at the top is growing in really well. I actually do need to do a trimming on it and probably try and replant those. You may notice that little pot in the back, that is a Bucephalandra, or Buse for short. I hope to get a couple more different kinds of those, and that's going to be going in the 40-gallon tall, which I'll show you in a second, so you guys kind of get an idea how that progress is going. That is definitely one of the tanks that I hope to have set up by the end of this month. If it can be a little hard to see, but if you look real closely in the back there, I do need to do a cleaning on this thing. You can even see some more Valsenaria. So I thought it was going to die back, but it actually looks like if I trim that one stem, I may get some very slow growth on it, and hopefully it'll start spreading around the back of the tank. And then looking up at the top here, because it's just floating, I do also have some Anubias Nana Petite. Those very small plant right there. That is another one that's going to go in the 40-gallon once I get that all set up. So overall, this tank is doing pretty good. Again, very slow growing, but I'm pretty excited to see where it goes over the next 6 months to a year if it really starts to fill in a lot more. And I may be trying some different plants in there to see what I can get to grow. But we'll see how that goes in the future. It may just be these guys and just letting them fill in the rest of this tank. So unfortunately, this will be the last weekend with the shrimp tank. It's going back to the classroom so it can be used as an educational tool for the kids. My girlfriend has mentioned possibly getting some more tetras in there, and we are going to try and pull out, 15-ish shrimp, maybe even more, to put in the 40-gallon and then some in the pond. We'll definitely be doing that this week so that we can have it ready and see if we can get 2 different colonies growing so you guys can enjoy some cherry shrimp still. And like I said, I will be trying to pester her constantly about updates on this tank to see if we can get some pictures or videos just to see how all of the plants are doing, as well as all of the shrimp and the fish. But unfortunately, I do think this will be the last video that you guys get to see with it here, at least for a good while. So it'll be sad to see it go, but there's a lot more fun things in store here in the fish room to kind of brighten that mood. So now real quick over kind of to our terrarium plants. We do need to bring some more inside, but you can kind of see we decided to do some like little propagules in here. We do have a good deal of like fungus or moss that's growing on some of these because they're probably getting too much light and not enough nutrients, but they are growing very well, so I'm not all too concerned about their growth. But it's kind of just an experiment to see how this progresses. It may turn into something else later down the road. Now on the back there you can see that the Ludwigia on the right here is doing really well. You probably can't tell too easily because of all the bright light, but it's looking really healthy. We are getting some like green spot algae on the test tube, and it's definitely even more noticeable on this Anarchus here. The Anarchus is growing great. I actually have a few different child plants that are growing off that mother plant, so I'm gonna have to get in there, do a deep cleaning, and definitely do some trimming on that and figure out where I'm going to put those child plants, probably into the gerarium, and let them just live out their life there, or put them out in the pond, and that way they can live out their life there. These guys, the succulents in the back, and then this plant, you'd probably have to ask my girlfriend what the name of it is. I don't honestly know off the top of my head. They're growing really well. You can see that we have one that's creeping all the way down, starting to move down even towards that second shelf. So hopefully here in the near future, some of these succulents and these guys will start get into a terrarium of some kind, as we can start working on more and more terrariums, since they only take, you know, maybe 30 minutes to an hour depending on how fancy you're making it. So that will be some good progress, and keep on the lookout for some more terrarium builds that we are hoping to do in the near future. Moving down to the shelf here, we have the snake plant, once again doing awesome. It's getting some more child plants that are coming up from the substrate, so that's just going to keep filling in. I'm not too surprised, and I'm not real concerned about this plant because it's super easy to take care of. Down here we have another succulent that probably got watered a little too much while we were gone on vacation, but it hopefully will rebound and we can get it into a terrarium and start nursing it back to health. It is slowly getting a little bit better, but it will probably take some time until it's back to full health. And then down here, our last succulent, doing really well. It looks like the lighting conditions for it are actually pretty positive. So I think this one would be another one that we will hopefully get into a terrarium, because it is a very unique type of succulent, and so it'll give any terrarium that we put it into a different dimension, or kind of that nice unique shape that it has. And then last, just bringing you over here real quick, this is the new cactus terrarium. So let me turn on a light here so you guys can see some backlighting, and I hopefully won't get in your way. But this is the cactus terrarium. So we're pretty pleased with how this turned out. We have some various driftwood, some little stones in there. We have 2 different kinds of succulents, and our little cactus here. It's actually the only cactus. But then we have this what I believe to be a succulent in the back, but I really like it because it adds a nice red color. These leaves you probably can't see too well, but they do have a very tint of red to very dark red depending on where the leaves are on this plant. So I'm hoping that this works out well. We'll keep an eye, and hopefully we can put it in a good spot with lots of light and a nice draft to keep those cactus and these succulents healthy. You can see we also even brought back some jawbone of either a rabbit or a groundhog, not really sure which, that we threw into this terrarium to just kind of add to that desert vibe that we were going for. So let us know down in the comments what you think of this terrarium. If you like it, things that you might do differently. We're always looking for some kind of insight onto how our terrarium builds are going so we can improve on them down the road. And last, just bringing you over here. Unfortunately, we don't have the light in yet. We ordered it yesterday and we were really hoping it would show up by the time the video was made, but I have no such luck. So unfortunately, you can't see the Dragonstone tank super well. Again, we're going to be working on that video. Hopefully can get that put out sometime this week. But the biggest addition is right here, and this is probably the biggest part, is you can't really see him right very well because of the lighting, and I'm going to try and set you guys up so you can see him a little bit better. But this is our newest male beta. It is a black crown tail, and I'm not going to give any names away because it's got to live 2 weeks in this tank, but if it can make it through 2 weeks, we will be giving it a name. There's already a name picked out for it, and you big Game of Thrones nerds can probably figure out what that name will be, but It's got to make the 2 weeks before it gets its official title. So we will hopefully have a new light set up for this tank by next week's video. It should be arriving sometime this evening, but again, unfortunately, it just did not make it to us today by the time this video had to be put together. Up top, real quick, we do have this succulent terrarium that is doing pretty well. The succulents are looking awesome. They're actually kind of exploding out of the back of this tank, so we may have to do some trimming. The moss may need to be replaced, but we may just try and trim it back and see if we can nurse it back to health. I think it just got too close to too much lighting and it kind of burnt the ends of it, so we'll see if we can bring it back to life, because there definitely is some life in the back here. You can definitely see some green moss. So if we can hopefully dial in that lighting for this terrarium, it will start doing much better, and that moss will start to come together and fill in the rest of it, the rest of the enclosure. So moving down to the bottom here, because we do have some information. Right here we do have the newest tank that I also hope will be set up by the end of the month. There is a big piece of driftwood that we got yesterday, and I'm not going to give any ideas away, but this will kind of be the basis for the upcoming scape that we have in here. It can take a little while to put together, and we're looking for some very particular pieces to make this the exact look that we want. But that's kind of the way it is with aquascaping. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. And so we want to do this tank justice, and so we're going to make sure that we find all of the pieces that we need. And we will be working to put this together, and hopefully we can get a video made so that you all can see just exactly how we put this tree together, because it's gonna take some DIY work on our end to make it have the exact look that we want. So be on the lookout for this aquarium build, hopefully by the end of this month, but we'll see if we can find all the pieces we need and get the look that we're going for. Alright, and then last but certainly not least, there's nothing really fancy here other than you can clearly see we cleaned it out. We actually cleaned everything out today, wiped down the glass, made sure it looks nice and pretty, because we are going to be having this tank set up by the end of the month. Come hell or high water, that is my biggest goal right now. I definitely want to make sure that that tank is up and running, hopefully with some stuff inside of it by the end of the month. I'm not going to give any ideas away, but I will give you a hint, and if you can figure it out, bravo to you, because this isn't going to be the biggest hint in the world, but hopefully even by next week, we will have the groundwork for this, and we will start adding at least inverts into this tank, and then hopefully be bringing on more fish as the months go by. I just don't want to overload the tank all at one time with like however many fish I plan on throwing in there, so keep an eye on that. This whole month I will hopefully be having weekly updates with a lot of information on what's going in there and how it's changed. But the quick tip that I have, or the quick hint I have, you probably can't see it very well because there's some kind of weird film on the top here, but it is almost ready. We are just hopefully another week or so out, but I'll bring it out of the water. And I have spent a good deal of money on this bonsai tree. This nice bonsai driftwood that I hope to make as the focal point of this tank. And again, I'm not going to give anything away, but if you can figure out what the idea behind this tank is with that kind of bonsai driftwood, bravo to you, because there's a lot that could be done with one of these. They are pretty pricey, but I do say if you are into like serious aquascaping, definitely try and get your hands on these, because they are super cool and there are so many different things you can do with them. Alright, so I'm going to get my ugly mug out of here. I'm going to do an underwater filming for the 40-gallon and for the pond, because there's a lot of big news for the pond. Basically, I will say that we had a lot of leaking going on while we were on vacation, and we had to use a lot of filler stuff to stop all those leaks. It seems like we were successful, and I hope that continues. But what I would say is, if you do have a leaking pond or something outdoors that you don't mind the way it really looks and you want a way to fill in all those cracks, there is a item. I don't have the can anymore. It's called Great Stuff. There is a green bottle that's like for ponds. It's usually used to make waterfalls for ponds. I used it to seal the bottom of the tank, and then I used a different Great Stuff that was like a tiny crack sealer to fill in the last cracks on the outside that we found later on. So you might notice that in the video, but I hope you guys enjoy it. The water's a lot clearer, so hopefully you'll get to see how awesome some of these guppies look. I'm super excited at how amazing they look in the sunlight. So here in the 40-gallon, things are looking fairly well. The plants, I took out the Rotala Hurrah. It was just looking very scraggly. I wasn't very happy with how it was turning out. So I am going to put some Pogostemon Stellatus Octopus in place of it. Now, here, probably by the end of the month, I'm going to be doing a whole rearrange of this tank. I've decided I'm going to try something different, and actually taking Bentley Pascal's advice, I'm going to try and do plants for profit. So I have a pretty decent variety in here so far. In the coming weeks, I will be adding more substrate, moving a bunch of plants around so that I have the nice tall stem plants in the back, something in the middle, and working forward to foreground plants that I'll probably try and be selling just locally. I don't really have a lot of good places to get plants around here unless I order it, so I'm going to try my hand at that and see if I can just make a little bit of money off of this hobby, since I have so much I'm putting into it. Now, I have started upping the CO2 in this tank and started upping the fertilizer that I am putting in there. And once I get that Stellatus Octopus in, I will do one more video on this, probably before I do the whole rescape or tweaking, whatever you want to call it. But it's probably not going to be looking much like an aquascape anymore. It's just more going to be a lot of plants that I'm trying to grow out and sell to local people via Craigslist, Facebook, anything like that. So if you are local, then be on the lookout. I will have a variety of plants that I will be trying to sell. And I am looking to get more, some rare stuff and a good variety. So keep your eyes open for that. Hopefully by the end of the month, I will have all of that set up. And I think I'm going to move all the guppies outside, put some mollies in there to help deal with the algae. And I think I'm just going to slowly start accumulating some really cool Nereid snails that I think will just add a nice, unique look to the types of Nereid snails that you usually see. Now over to the pond. The pond has actually undergone some work. You can see that there's a little black foam. It is like Great Stuff pond foam. I really like it. I think it could be used for a lot of possibilities, and I may even consider using it down the road in some aquascapes or builds just to kind of mess around with it and see what it can do. But thankfully, with some Great Stuff on the outside, and that fixed one little crack, and some Great Stuff on the inside, it looks like I've covered it all up. The guppies are looking awesome. There's a handful of them now that have some really great color, so I'm super excited about that. I did add some duckweed to this pond. Unfortunately, it looks like because of the water movement, my duckweed's probably going to die. it seems like the only floating plant I can get to work is hornwort, which is a testament to it. It's an amazing floating plant, and it's a great beginner plant for people. So I would highly recommend that if you are starting out on a new tank and you just want something real easy that'll help keep your water clean, and fish love it, and it's really great for breeding. Now I do have a bunch of tadpoles again. They've come back into the pond, but I'm okay with that. So overall, the pond's looking really good now, and I can't wait to add some more plants into it and have them start growing out too.